Today on Locked On Red Wings, the Grand Rapids Griffins choke away a 3-goal lead in the third period, fall in double overtime, and are eliminated from the Calder Cup Playoffs.
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. Scotty's a host over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a sports writer for CNG newspapers, while I am a color commentator for Oakland University, ACHA D1 men's hockey. And today's episode is kind of, honestly, pretty predictably covering the third straight loss by the Grand Rapids Griffins. Predictably in the fact that I kind of felt after that second game that it was a wrap. They did not look like they showed up to play in any of the games. Unpredictable part was how they lost the third game, Scotty, and the fact that they came out pretty strong, had a good solid 40 minutes, and then just pissed it away in the third period. But before we get to that, gotta let you guys know today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Scotty, man, when talking about this Griffins game, this double overtime loss to knock them out of the Calder Cup playoffs, like, where do you want to begin? First thought, overall thoughts on the series? Like, what part of this mess do you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, we can do a first thought after the game, which obviously will because it's also the final game of the series, we'll kind of just group in and be a first thought of the series too. Was like that was brutal, man. Like you don't lose elimination playoff games like that too terribly often. You don't see losses where, the Griffins were up 2 goals going into the third and stretched it out into double overtime and then lost. That is about as excruciating of a like bleed out as you can endure. I mean, that's just absolutely brutal. I honestly, like, I think you said it best before we hit record, where like they just played really well for 40 minutes. Really well is probably even that's relative. Like they were the better team. I thought they played solid hockey through the first 40 minutes. And then I don't know whether it was just a belief like, oh, we can kind of like sit on our hands and who, like we got this one in the bag, or what it was. But it just seemed like the ice really got tilted in the other direction, and they were never really able to recover. I mean, even in those overtime periods, it did go to 2 OT, I guess, but it wasn't without its theatrics and high intensity moments in the first overtime. I just honestly, it's and it's like it's not the end of the world. It's the AHL playoffs at the end of the day. This isn't like a reflection of the state of the Red Wings organization or anything. I just thought they just got completely outclassed. Like that there was maybe 1.5 periods in this entire series where I was like, oh, like the Griffins, look like they're the better team on the ice right now. Like they just got completely outclassed in all 3 of these games.
Yeah, like you were looking for a response in game 3, and they came out and they responded for the first 40 minutes. And then the third period happened, and it was the same defensive mistakes that we've been talking about all series, and goaltending mistakes too. And unfortunately, that one mistake by Kosa, which we'll talk about a little bit later, kind of defined his game to this. Other than that, it was a good game from Kosa. He made some huge saves in overtime, but people aren't going to pay attention to that when you have as large of a gap as he did. And then the defensive, again, the lapses in the net front were so obvious. And the Texas Stars had plenty too. That's why the Griffins sped out to a 4-1 lead in the second period, because of the fact that the defenses was just so porous on both sides of the puck. Some crazy goals got happen that should just never take place. You would see in like men's league. For instance, like MBN's goal, right? He falls down.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Like a deer on ice in the circle, stands back up, floats into the slot, 2 defenders, nowhere to be found, and gets the puck from Lombardi and just buries it. Like, it's on both sides, but at the end of the day, like, the Griffins, I don't know if it's that they got comfortable with the 4-1 lead or the Stars just had that really supreme third period push, maybe a little bit of both, probably a little bit of both. But oh my God, like you cannot collapse like that in an elimination game. Like that is unacceptable. And it doesn't matter now because they got eliminated, right? But I agree with you that series as a whole, they were completely outclassed. Game 1 and Game 2, they did not look like they belonged in the same rink as the Texas Stars. Game 3, it looked like they were trying to change that narrative until the collapse, but it's such a piece of the bigger picture, a piece of the bigger problem, which we have seen with this team since around New Year. This is kind of the reverse of the Red Wings did after the New Year, where Griffins were one of the best teams in the league around New Year, and then they just, second half of the season, their scoring just evaporated. They were scoring so many goals before Christmas, and they struggled this. I mean, obviously they scored 4 in this one, but 1-2 goals, that was a lot of what they could manage in most games, and they were bailed out by goaltending to get the remaining wins that they did in a lot of instances, right? Like the game that they won right at the end of the season was an overtime victory, right? Like or a shootout victory. It was a low-scoring affair. It's just, I think it was 1-1 going into overtime. They could not score goals to save their life, and the goaltending was no longer able to bail them out. Kosa had a bad game 1. Campbell had a bad game 2. Kosa had a better game in game 3, but had a huge gaffe, which helped shift momentum. So it's just like, this is a team that did not look like they belonged, kind of fell backwards into the playoffs, into a good seed, too. They got a bye to the divisional round.
Right,
they were the third seed. Fell backwards into that seed because of their incredible first half, and then just continue to look like they didn't belong, and honestly, out in 3 games like they deserve to be. Like, just poor hockey all the way around. So that's kind of my long-winded thought on the game and the series as a whole.
No, for sure. And it's interesting when we look, and we'll talk about, individual players and whatnot, obviously the rest of the show, but it's just interesting. We had that conversation about, biggest organizational needs and looking at the team in its current state. You also, like, to be fair to them, you got to remember that this is a team that constantly has to deal with like roster and personnel changes, right? The call ups, the send downs, and everything else. But it is when, again, like last week when we talked about the positional needs in the organization and kind of like, in the draft, what do you want to add, whatever. Like you watch a series like this and it kind of is a reminder of like, hey, the Wings have a good farm system. There's a lot of good players kind of scattered around the organization that we're really excited about. And I genuinely believe, have one of the better, farms in the entire sport. But you can never have too much organizational depth. There is still like that. I think that a series like this is kind of why, when we give the lame and not exciting answer of like, oh yeah, they kind of still could use everything organizationally, like this is a reminder of that. Like they were destroyed on the blue line, in the crease. I mean, again, like obviously you're banking a lot of the future on Kosa, but like Campbell probably isn't going to be here beyond this season and is obviously not a long-term option either way. And even Kosa has, let up a little bit. And then the goal scoring in this series was brutal. Like maybe I shouldn't even say the goal scoring, the offensive creativity, the offensive aggressiveness was brutal. Like outside of, again, maybe the first 2 periods in game 3, it was a really, really poor offensive effort throughout these 3 games. So just, again, a reminder that of why, you hear me and obviously I know you feel the same way, Bri, about just like best player available, best player available. Because like
should be
kind of use everything.
It should be your philosophy no matter what, right?
Agreed.
The only time it should matter what position they play is if you have 2 players who you view equally. You're like, okay, this defender and center, I think are equal skill level, although albeit different positions, which is a position of need more. But if you have a player you think is the best player, but it's not a position of need, you take the best player. And even more so with the Red Wings right now, where a lot of their youth is graduating to the NHL level, and you're trying to like, well, hopefully, they do something with the pick other than draft it. But if you're going to draft it, now you're trying to restock the cabinets because the youth is finally moving up. You could use something anywhere. Scotty, let's head to a quick break. When we return, we'll talk about difference makers, I guess, as well as other notable performers in this game. Because there are. I hate being this guy, but I am this guy. It's how I am. But like, there are individual things to like from this game, even if the game as a whole and the series as a whole was kind of a big dumpster fire. So stay tuned to segment 2 of Locked On Red Wings. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete finance command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spend in all one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building your wealth. When you start using Monarch, you're going to realize how much you were spending on food delivery, package delivery, subscriptions. Now you budget smarter and save more. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty, difference makers in this game. What stood out to you?
Yeah, I mean, again, like the offense early was good. So if we want to talk about difference makers in the beginning of the game, and even, I mean, we've already touched on it a little bit. Like I thought Kosa was pretty good, again, outside of the really bad blunder there. And, as the game went along, but I don't know, like I think that, man, it's really hard for me to not just get way overly excited about like MBN and the goal and the that's what his second goal since joining the team.
2 games in a row.
Yeah, hasn't obviously has only played 4 or 5 games for them as a whole, and has 2 goals in it. Really exciting. So I don't know if he was the biggest difference maker on the ice. Probably not. But I just, that's the thing that is very. What are you doing? Are you okay?
What?
You like groaned and went, "Oh man."
No, I was agreeing with you.
Oh.
Because you said, I don't know if he's the biggest difference maker. And I said, no.
Oh. You honestly, I thought you spilled something on your shirt. You were looking at your shoulder and went,
No, I don't even have. No, actually, I was looking at my sunburn, if you want to know. I don't know if it shows on camera.
Oh, that's the same color as your shirt. That's crazy.
That was the idea. I wanted to make people think that it was just a long sleeve.
You crushed it, dude. Yeah. So, yeah, obviously not the biggest difference maker in the game. We know where he's playing him in the lineup card, but so I guess this like isn't even really my answer for difference maker, but I really like to see him continue to produce, and that's obviously something that we all as a fan base are going to be kind of keeping tabs on and hopefully seeing a lot more of next year.
Yeah, and I mean, as a notable performer, he's definitely worth mentioning, right? You did say goals in 2 consecutive games, but also in game 2, he started the game on the 4th line. This is something I actually failed to notice. It wasn't until I read Max's article from The Athletic. Make sure you subscribe to The Athletic, read Max's stuff, and keep him employed. He's a fantastic, probably one of, if not the best, Detroit Red Wings beat writer we have. Anyways, you're welcome for the free advertisement, Max. He mentioned in his article that MBN started on the 4th line, and by the end of the game was playing on the top line in over 20 minutes that game. And because almost like we were saying, right, his style of game will translate better to the NHL than ASP's because of the fact that he loves to get in the corners. He loves to engage in puck battles and win those things. And so smaller ice just means he can get to the corner faster.
Right.
And obviously that means less space for him to get open for a shot, which because his shot's lethal. So that's a downside. But 2 consecutive games, he didn't have any problem finding open space because the Stars just left him to be on 2 consecutive goals that he has scored. He falls over in the circle, gets up, and Lombardi feeds him the puck out front and just buries it. It's the funniest replay in the world. He falls over nothing. But yeah, as a notable performer, he is one of the bright spots from this hockey game for the Griffins. If you're trying to like look to the future, not at the past that is this series, he is something that's worth mentioning. Now, I do have a nodal or a difference maker in this game. And for me, Scotty, that's Hughes of the Texas Stars. He gets into that fight with Nate Danielson, Cameron Hughes, about halfway through the third period. And I felt like that completely changed the tone of the third. Now, obviously, the gaff from Kosa came after that, and I thought that gave them added life. But he engaged in that fight with Danielson. I don't know what Danielson was doing. Like, Hughes had his gloves off, and he was starting to throw punches, and Danielson's worried about getting the helmet off of Hughes, and then he does, and he only throws one glove off, not the other, and starts just throwing. But regardless, Cameron Hughes initiating that fight with one of the highly regarded prospects for the Detroit Red Wings fired up the team, fired up the fans. Then he goes on to score a goal. I think, was it the game tying goal, or it made it 4-3? He made it 4-3 on the power play out front, because he, on the power play, for whatever reason, was out net front with nobody covering him, so he just directed it home. And then he scored the double overtime winner, of course, that he just barely tucked under the pad of Kosa. Kosa actually made the save initially, and then, like, somehow his pad got lifted up off the ice, and then it continued to slide through. Like, he made the toe save and then didn't make the toe save. So Hughes, without a doubt, in my opinion, is the difference maker of this hockey game, just because of the sheer amount of things he did to add value to this game. The fight for the energy, the 2 goals. Capobianco, I think, is my difference maker of the series, though. Sure. Every single game, he was scoring a goal, getting assists. He had an assist on the game tying goal in this one. So Capobianco, to me, is like, he is the boogeyman for the Griffins in this series. That's what we should do. Series boogeymen. If the Red Wings ever make the playoffs, we'll have a series boogeymen.
Series boogeymen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Capobianco had 2 assists in this game. He had 2 secondary assists on the 4-3 goal and the 4-4 goal. So great. He's all over us. Anyway.
Yeah, I thought goaltending for well, not for the Griffins. Goaltending for the Stars was particularly, maybe not the best example to say it after Game 3, but I thought in this series,
Poirier got pulled for Magnus Hellberg.
Well, you're right. In this series, especially the first 2 games, it was a huge difference maker for sure.
Yeah. Poirier was very good in games 1 and 2, but I also think the Griffins didn't necessarily challenge him that well, because it felt like they didn't have that many. Right. Yeah. Crazy. Other notable performers, Scotty. Lombardi had a goal and an assist. He was the one who fed MBN from behind the boards, all 5'10" of him is what he's listed as now, which maybe he grew. Who knows? But he won that.
Maybe he grew.
Maybe he grew, but he was like 5'7".
Brutal.
And he's a great player, though. I'm really excited for Amadeus Lombardi. And then that goal he scored to make it 4-1, just the toe drag around the goaltender. Oh, it was chef's kiss. It was beautiful. So just, again, another one of those small moments from a player that you're looking forward to in the future to continue to grow, making big-time plays in big moments. Too little too late in the series, but at the time in the game, that was huge.
For sure. I think the same with Danielson, just like guys that produced and that we are really excited about going forward. Obviously, the series doesn't go the Griffins' way, but seeing Danielson, well, yeah, the fight, quote unquote, was wild. But good to see him get in, the score sheet as well and whatnot. So, yeah. I don't know. Like, this was just such a. I feel like I just keep saying the same thing over and over again. Like, it's just this. This was a complete collapse. But given the structure of AHL hockey, like, there's always stuff that you can look at and kind of be excited about going forward. It's just it did not come together for these 3 games whatsoever.
And I thought Soderblom had at least one really notable shift where he had 2 huge chances and laid a big body, but like. Overall, I was really underwhelmed by a lot of the players and prospects in this series, and by no means does that mean that they're all busts, right? Like, they had a bad series. It's
like with Elmer, especially, like
who came to the NHL and was good.
Right, he hasn't been there in forever, and he was good in the NHL. Like yeah, man. Like, I don't know, he was kind of just like thrown back into the fire in a really high intensity game when he hasn't played with these guys and. Consistently, in 4 months? Like, I don't know. I don't really have too much of a problem with the fact that he was a little bit underwhelming. But
Yes, and then when we return, Scotty, let's talk a little bit more in depth about Kosa. Talk about the gaff. We've mentioned it a couple times,
Yeah.
and just see where you're at with Sebastian Kosa as a goaltending prospect for the Detroit Red Wings. So stay tuned to segment 3 of Locked On Red Wings. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Yeah, Scotty, we've talked about it already a little bit, but not really addressed it directly head on. Put your phone on vibrate, please, when we're talking. Scott,
Dude, so the funny thing is my laptop wasn't on Do Not Disturb.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's like professor in class, like all phones on, all ringers off, please.
Shut up or get out.
Yeah. There have been a couple of those. But
you're telling me, buddy.
I have a feeling that you probably talked a lot in class, and that's what they were talking about.
Dude, we could call my dad right now. Like, let's bring up some of those old report cards where I just constantly was getting in trouble for talking. Yeah, anyway.
Well, my mom used to sit down at the parent-teacher conferences with me, and she goes, let me guess, good kid talks too much. And the teacher would go, yep. I was like, great, okay. I get good kid, though. Let's take the win. We'll take the win.
We'll take the win, yeah.
We'll take the win. Kosa, it's tough because he made some really big clutch saves in this game. There were 2 breakaways that he made huge saves on to keep the game close or maintain the lead, depending on the moments in the game when those happened. In the first overtime, he made a lot of big saves, and he made a lot of big saves in the second overtime and nearly made a big save on the game-winning goal, right? He got his toe on it, and somehow it managed to sneak its way through. But it's those moments like the goal that made it 4-2 after the Hughes fight, right? They're already starting to gain momentum, and then you go behind the net. If you're a goaltender, tend the goal, right? Like, you go behind the net, and you're not paying attention to anyone who could be coming behind you. You make a blind backhand pass right into the guy, and then you panic, freeze, and Blumel just goes out front and buries it. And that gaff is so huge to swinging the momentum in this game. Like, you went from, they have a little bit of momentum to, oh my God, they have the momentum now. Like, this is all them. Like, they believe they can do this now because of this goal. And, like, I just want to know, right, in the games that we have seen, especially in the playoffs here, only 2, because Campbell made the start in 1, but even that's, like, a problem, that Campbell even got a start. Where are you at with Kosa as a prospect? Does this shake your faith at all in him because of the fact that this is supposed to be, like, this is a guy we wanted here next year in a full-time role, and he couldn't get it done in the playoffs?
No. My thoughts of Kosa have not changed whatsoever. Ultimately, this is a 2-game sample size where he, like, was actually outside of, again, the one really brutal play, like, was pretty good in the second game. He is still so young. Like, he is still so young, and if obviously, like, one of the old adages of hockey development is just, like, goalies are weird, dude. Like, it's not a linear path. Development is not linear. If the Red Wings go into next season banking on getting, like, starting caliber NHL production from Kosa in net for 40 plus games, that's the Red Wings' fault, not Kosa's. And I don't think that we're signed up for that because we have Mrazek under contract, which is so awesome.
Oh my God. If you're watching on YouTube, the face he made when he was getting ready to say that.
But it is, you know what I mean, though? Like, I don't think just because in this series he wasn't that great that my opinion of him has changed big picture. Like, he's still so young and has so much more time to develop, and probably now almost certainly, like, won't start off in the NHL next season. I think the plan is still for him to be a really good goalie long term, be the goalie of the future per se, but that doesn't mean that, like, he has to be ready right now for that to be true.
Yeah, and the thing I want to emphasize too, Scotty, when talking about Kosa, and I know obviously the playoffs is where it matters the most, but on the regular season, his numbers were nearly identical the last 2 years. And so it'd be weird to take our opinion of Sebastian Kosa that was so strong after last year and with those numbers to then turn around and say he's a bust when putting up nearly identical regular season numbers. Obviously, the playoffs were disappointing and he didn't play great. But you also want to know who didn't play great? Every single player who was in front of him. Every single one. So many of these goals would have been prevented if the players in front of him did not completely collapse around him. How many goals were scored because defensemen weren't taking care of the job and clearing the net front? Yeah. How many goals were scored?
That game one especially, dude. That was
right. How many goals were scored off turnovers in neutral zone that caused an odd man rush going the other way? It's one of those things where it's like, if you're going to say that you are afraid of Kosa's development, you almost have to say that for every other player on the team, and that's not fair. Like, the fact of the matter is the entire team underperformed, every single one of them. But that does not mean that every individual player is a bust. And I do think that Sebastian Kosa has a very bright future, but he does need to become more consistent in these moments. But he had a great season. He did. Now, I do think I see a little bit more. I will say, on the flip side, I do see a little bit more of what Yzerman was hinting at than I did before that, where he said that they dipped a little bit in the second half of the season. You need to see him play better because they're not going to guarantee him a spot on the roster. I see that more, and I will be disappointed and a little frustrated if he's not ready to play in the NHL next year, because we need goaltending. The Red Wings need goaltending so badly. And Augustine, who's another guy who's a highly touted prospect, right? Goalie of the year, I believe, in the NCAA. Like, he's still years away. He's even further away than Kosa because he still has to make the leap to professional hockey after college is done. So, like, I'd be frustrated because it has to be Kosa. It feels like there's that, and obviously it doesn't have to be, but like there's that pressure, that perceived pressure that and I'm sure he's feeling it, that like he's got to be the guy because you put your chips in this player. You've spent a lot of time developing him, so you want him to be that guy as early as next year, hopefully next year. Like, we were talking about him being here next year. And there is a little part of me that's like, after this playoffs, I'm like, is he ready? I think he will be a good NHL goalie, but is it going to take even more time? I guess is the point I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, even more time is relative. Like, he's not 4 years away anymore. But like, if you're asking if he's going to get handed the keys next year, I'd say no. I'd say that's probably more of the following season thing if you're talking about going into opening night.
I wouldn't say being here full-time and handing the keys are a little bit different. Like, being here full-time means being on the roster full-time. I would expect him splitting time with another goalie while he learns to be a starting goaltender. But like, get him meaningful game time, right? Like 30 to 40 starts, ideally,
for sure,
to start. So
for sure, my point is and remains that if you are requiring a rookie to be a solid NHL goalie for 32 to 37 games, that's pressure that you're putting on him yourself. That doesn't matter like how he got there. That's your decision. That's the front office's decision.
That is also because I'm getting impatient.
Right.
I will fully admit I am starting to get impatient and ready for us to take the Red Wings to take that next step. Like, I want to see these young guys in the NHL like win. And I know if we say win is enough. We did, and we saw, and it was great, but the team also took a step back points wise. So I'm just like, I'm eager and I'm getting impatient. That's I can fully own up to that.
Yeah. Again, I'm not sure a rookie goaltender is going to take you another step forward, is my point.
But it wouldn't. I would not expect Kosa to come here and be the solution right away, but it's just getting those minutes would be so impactful and so helpful. But again, he has to prove that he's ready for NHL minutes, which is why while I still have faith that he's going to be a good goalie and had a great season, a little bit of me is like a little like worried that maybe he's not ready for the NHL level after this playoff performance, right? Like, I can recognize that he needs more.
I just straight up don't think he is. I don't even think it's going to be much of a conversation this fall. Maybe I'm totally off base, but I don't think he is ready. But that also like doesn't bother me whatsoever. Like, he'll be fine and be really good. It's just,
it bothers me a little. It bothers me a little. I'm not going to lie. It's just like this team needs a goalie so bad. And I was so hoping, and again, this is my fault. This is me, right? But I was so hoping this would be his final year in the AHL and he'd be ready to develop at the NHL next season. And maybe he will. Maybe he'll force his way out of the team. But like every move that Yzerman has done and said indicates to the opposite.
Well, there's also like I have this conversation every single February on Locked On Tigers as well. It's like people put way too much stock into like opening night roster. Like he's not going to make the opening night roster next year. He could still play 20
Casper
games.
didn't.
Right. He could still play, 20 or 30 games next year and not get called up until the end of November. Like, you know what I mean? Like just because if he starts off in Grand Rapids and then just like crushes it and has taken that next step forward, then they're not going to prioritize really, I would venture to say either of the goalies, but certainly not Peter Mrazek, over Kosa's development. So,
yeah, I just can't see this team make the playoffs next year. Well, then again, even with a rookie Kosa, I'd struggle to see this team make the playoffs because you would be relying on Kosa to be some kind of magician, which is unfair.
We got a whole off season.
Just thinking about the goaltending makes me really.
We got a whole off season of potential moves and potential moves that don't happen that we can get mad about.
Mrazek. Okay.
We ball, though.
We do ball. We honestly do ball. We'll be back with a new episode tomorrow where we will discuss the RFAs on the team. Stay tuned for that. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.
Every day.